Hi, I'm Phil Clendeninn, and I'm here at the NAMM show, and we're doing some live stream. Live. Live. All right, live at the NAMM show. So I'm here to talk a little bit about getting into making sounds with your Montage or your MoDX. And one of the tools you can use is Sample Robot. And you can get Sample Robot absolutely free. As a Montage owner, you just go to YamahaMusicSoft.com and register and get your copy of Sample Robot. Now, we know that there are two engines in the Montage, both AWM2 and the FMX engine. So AWM2, Advanced Wave Memory, is samples. And samples are digital recordings that you turn into musical instruments. And one of the things that you can do, one of the most powerful synthesizers ever to roam the planet Earth, is the Montage. This motion control engine can be somewhat intimidating if you just dive into the deep end of the pool. But what we're going to do is we're going to wade out into the water, all right? Make your own sounds. So Sample Robot takes all of the worry out of doing it. It is as simple as setting it up, all right? And I find that a lot of people, when we see us online, on YamahaSynth.com, there are a lot of questions. People get confused. There's too many controllers. Well, you start too deep. What you want to do is learn the power of a single element. A single element is a synthesizer. All right, and we'll talk about that. You have a tone source, an oscillator. You have a filter, something to change the timbre of the sound, and you have an amplifier, something to amplify the sound. Now, this makes a good template for musical instrument emulation, simply because it emulates what happens in the real world. So think about a trumpet player. All right, the trumpet by itself makes no noise. What is the oscillator in the person playing a trumpet? Well, it's obviously the lips. The lips is what is vibrating. So your oscillator oscillates, it's vibrating, it's what makes the sound. All right, you feed that into a filter. A filter changes the timbre of the sound. The trumpet player is only doing... That's all the trumpet player is doing. Excuse me, but that's all they're doing. What filters the sound and gives it timbre is, of course, the horn itself, the shape of the horn and the material it's made out of. So whether it's made out of metal or nickel, it's going to change the timbre. If it's 22 feet long or if it's 12 feet long, it's going to make a difference in the timbre. So filters help us shape the sound. The amplifier, what's the amplifier in the trumpet? Now, a lot of people think it's the bell. Well, no, the bell doesn't make any noise. It's the lungs and the jaws and the cheeks of the player. All right? They apply force to it and get air to vibrate in the instrument. So that's a good model for a synthesizer. Your AWM engine is an oscillator, a filter, all right, and an amplifier. That's what you find in each element. And each part can have 8 elements. Now, you think about that for a second, all right? So what we're going to do is show you the power of a single element. Now, let's take a look at Sample Robot from Montage here, and I'll show you the wizard. So right up here, I go to File and launch the project wizard. And what's going to happen here now is it's going to step you through everything you need to do to set up. It's very simple. It introduces itself, and I'm going to do automatic sampling. Why not? All right? You can give your project a name. I would highly recommend it that you give it a name so you can find it later. And you can direct it to a directory on your computer. Then you need to tell it, what you're doing. What's going to be your audio interface? And in this case, of course, it is the Montage. I'm going to do a sample at 44.1 in stereo, 16-bit. And what I'm sampling is this little reface DX. Okay. Then you tell it what MIDI channel you're on. You give it the basic specifics. So it steps you through each part of the process. Then you tell it how many notes do you want to sample. All right. You have your 37 keys, your 49 keys, your 61 keys, your 76 keys, your 88 keys, and of course 128 for that super piano. All right. You can set it for 88 if you want them. You do the number of velocities. So Sample Robot allows you to do layering. So velocity crossfades is the way in which samples traditionally change sounds. As you know, in the montage, we have many ways to do that. Velocity is about striking the key. How fast the key goes down, it crosses to a different sample. So if you notice when you play the drums or any of the drum sounds on here, you hit a snare drum, there would be 5 different snare drums on that one. That's a velocity crossfade. It's, you know, you hit it soft, you get a soft strike snare, and the character of the snare changes as you go up. So you can do multiple layers. I'm just going to do one, and you can tell it how many notes to sample. Now, one of the keys to being good at sampling is to be realistic. That's the thing to do. A lot of people they think they're going to sample their piano at home because it sounds great. They're going to strike middle C and they'll have that piano. It's not that easy. But what you have to do is be realistic about what you're going to sample. If there's a lot of movement going on in the sound, well, that's going to be more difficult to sample. What you want to do is get the raw waveform and then build it into something. And we'll take a look at that when I get to the front panel of the montage here. You want to do all of that in the synthesizer. What you want is the raw wave. You want just the data, and then you can mess with it in the synthesizer. So then you tell it how long do you want to make a sample, and it makes recommendations to you about length. So this is the length of the sound before it starts looping. And now you can have it automatically loop. Now this is, you can get in there and do that if you want, but the auto loop, it's worth a try. It'll save you a lot of work. So let's set it. All right, and then they give you some suggestions about the looping. All right, and more complex waves require a little more work. I have it set for intermediate. And loop starts at about 50% of the length. So you can see that the wizard steps you through everything. You don't have to make the decisions on your own. They're presented to you one after the other. All right? And then you reach the finish. Now what you would do then is start sampling. One of the things that happens then, you can go make a cup of coffee, come back, and then play your instrument. Okay? So the sampling is all automatic. So if you told it to sample all 88 notes, it would arm the sampler, hit the send a MIDI command to what you're sampling, assign it to the note, and then move to the next one. All right? So it's a process. So it takes 88 keys to take maybe 8-10 minutes. All right? So we'll move ahead and assume we have sampled. But Sample Robot is just that simple to set up. And once you have your waveform, all right, you move it into the instrument. Now remember, we are doing just one element. Each sound in the montage, each part, AWM part, can have up to 8 elements. And each element is like a complete synthesizer. All right, so I'm going to take a look at the a string sound that I have. This is like a cooking show. I move right to having the sample in here. This is a single element sound in the montage. All right? Now, exploring. When you look at the screen on the montage, on the main screen, you have a couple of different views. You can toggle the view with the Performance Home button. You see that you can look at the knob assignments, or you can look at a view which gives you more information about where on the keyboard things are mapped. As you know, you can have 8 different parts going. So I'm going to select part number 1 and drop into Edit. All right. Now, in the lower left corner of the montage screen, it will tell you where you are. I'm right now looking at part 1, and I'm looking at the common parameters of part 1. All right. And navigation is one of the things, the more you do it, the easier it becomes. So I can either look at the common parameters, or you can see in the right next here, I have the element number 1. So there's a single element in this sound. One element. Okay. So let's take a look at how this is built. All right. Now we talked about the oscillator. As we know, the element itself is the oscillator. Okay. And what we can do when we look at common is assign controllers. So mod control and control assign. Now the control matrix on the Montage and the MODX is massive. And it's really what it's all about. When you are controlling multiple sounds, you want to have the ability to speak to each of those sounds individually with your musical gestures. When I talk about a musical gesture, striking a key is a musical gesture. Moving a wheel is a musical gesture. Moving the ribbon, or touching the ribbon, or hitting a button, or turning a knob, those are all musical gestures. And what you do is get to program exactly how the instrument responds to your musical gestures. So when you're on the control assign screen, a very important screen, there are several ways to get there. If you're new to this keyboard, I recommend that you start learning the shortcuts. The shortcuts not only help you, they make it easy to get around. So from the home screen, I always tell people, if you shift and hit home, you get an overview. And what it's done is take you to the motion control overview screen. He said. All right. And I'm now looking at common, or I can look at part 1. And as you can see, I can look at any of the parts. There can be 16 parts in a performance. All right. And it lets you know what's going on with your controllers in each part. All right. So you can look at controllers, you can look at assignable knobs, you can look at the faders, or you can look at the super knob. All right. If you set this to part 1, that's the one we're working on, you'll get a box, a shortcut box that says Edit Part 1 Control Settings. And just like that, it takes you right to the control assign screen. Now, you light auto select. When that's green, all you have to do is move a controller to see what is assigned to that controller. All right, if you have an assignable knob, you can take a look at what's assigned to an assignable knob, or to the modulation wheel, or to the ribbon controller, or your foot controllers, or the super knob. All right, so it's a quick way to review. Right next to the auto select button is the display filter. Now, this is a very important concept to understand for Montage users. If you're going to get in and even snorkel, you need to know about the display filter. It allows you to isolate or show what each controller is doing, so you can look at them individually, or you can set it to all. As you know, there are 4 what they call source destinations. That's what a control set is. A source is a physical controller. A destination is a parameter destination, a parameter target parameter. So you can see here, cutoff is on the mod wheel. And here is the curve. So what you're reading left to right on the curve screen is basically how it proceeds as you apply the controller. And you can see that as I move the controller here, it's going down in value. All right. So what's happening here is I am closing the filter. All right. So you can see how you can adjust that, how quickly it does it from left to right. All right. So a negative value would be closing. All right. You want to see what assign knob number 1 is. You make sure assign is lit, and you touch assign knob number 1. You can see that it is doing element LFO AMD, E LFO AMD. All right. Now, if that is foreign to you, it's an individual element, a low-frequency oscillator. A low-frequency oscillator is one that is typically below 20 cycles per second. All right. You've probably learned this in junior high school, that the human ear can hear between 20 and 20,000 cycles per second. I think the perfect athlete on the planet is a 7-year-old boy. They can usually hear all the way up to 20K. I haven't heard 20K in many years, but it's okay. The older you get, you don't want to hear that high stuff anyway. But a low-frequency oscillator is a rate. Usually it's applied for things like vibrato, all right? Vibrato is a musical term. Tremolo is a musical term. Wah-wah is a musical term. The technical terms would be amplitude modulation. Now that's tremolo, all right? That's what's going on here. So it's changing the volume up and down rapidly, all right? But when we say rapidly, it's not really that fast. It's not fast enough to be a musical tone. But it's a rate. And of course, you can increase that. All right, your ratio will increase that curve. So you can see that curve gets steeper now. So you set that to taste. This is everything that about controllers. It's about how far do you want to move the controller to get the response or the reaction that you wish to play. Now you can see here that assign knob number 2 is assigned to AEG attack and AEG release. That's amplitude envelope generator attack, how quickly it comes in, and how fast it goes away. So by increasing this, I will get a slow attack and a slow release. All right? Very dramatic. So this is, again, set to taste. It's how you wish to play. If you need to articulate a line, obviously you need it quick. Not too quick, and certainly not too slow. You don't want to do that. So everything about programming is really using your ear and your musical sensibility. Now, I think those are the only 2 knobs I have assigned so far. All right? Then the super knob. Now, what happens with these knobs? Each part can have its own 8 assignable knobs, all right? And, of course, you have knobs dedicated for cutoff, for resonance, for the depth of the, the filter. You have portamento, attack, decay, sustain, release. You've got EQ, you've got pan. All of these are accessible knobs. So I try to tell people, with the Montage, you have a group of 24 knobs here and plus 8 assignable knobs, all right? And you have that per part. And that's amazing. And somebody said, well, if they put this all on a front panel, well, it would be too big to reach everything, all right? Or you'd have some 130 some odd knobs on the front panel. Not too fun to play with. But this system, and that's why there is a super knob. The super knob allows you to control each of those knobs in each part individually. In other words, you can set how it responds. It may move one knob a lot, it may move one knob just a little, okay? So that's what the super knob is about. It allows you to intelligently control your sounds. So exploring like a single element sound is a very great way to, or a perfect way to learn how to program. Taking apart sounds or trying things out, assigning things is really up to you. Now I'm going to look at it all here. So we did attack and release. And we have, of course, the mod wheel doing, the ribbon is doing cutoff. All right. And of course you have assignable knobs, assignable switches, that you can quickly change something. So if you need to articulate a line and then have long release, you could put that on an assigned knob and you just engage that knob for that last chord. So there is many ways to approach programming a single element. You take your time. It's very easy to get around on. So if you're into learning how to program your montage, what you want to do is start with simple structures. So with the sample robot, you'll be bringing in a single element at first, and I recommend that you play with that element. Or you could start with a knit voice and learn how these things work. Okay, I'm going to take another a look at another single element sound. Let's go to now. This one is ambient synth pad number 2. Now, what's happening on this one? Again, it's a single element. Let's take a look. We'll drop into edit. We select part 1. You can see that we're looking at part 1 common, and there is a single element. This single element, this is a great one to show off the new LFO. Now, I'm going to contradict myself about LFOs. But LFO, again, is a low-frequency oscillator. We have now extended the range. I should mention that if you own a Montage or a MODX, we're going to come pick it up from you and take it away from you if you don't download the updates. All right, it's part of the product design. I've met at least 5 people who have come to the show here and were unaware of the updates. It's like getting a new synthesizer, all right? People come to the show, you going to replace the Montage? No, we are adding to it at all times. So we're up to 3.0 on the Montage, 2.0 on the MODX. Please get those updates, because some of the things I'm going to talk about you won't have unless you have these updates. So here we have, again, ELFO PMD. So this is an element LFO, pitch modulation depth. Now that's very scientific, pitch modulation depth. Musicians call that vibrato, all right? So vibrato is usually the left hand. It's the modulator, all right? So in a situation where you're playing a stringed instrument and you're adding vibrato, the right hand maybe plucks the string and causes the vibration. It is the carrier, and your left hand is the modulator. You cannot hear the modulator by itself, all right? That'll come into play in FM. But here you have a pitch modulation depth, and you have a knob doing LFO speed. Good to see you. So we have extended the range of the LFO, where it goes up into the audio range. So this is one way in which a single sound can become very huge. And again, these one element sounds are the best ones to learn from, because a lot of times people go into a sound and maybe there are 22 elements going on and they're making changes and not hearing any difference. So, you know, we want you to wade out into the water. Don't dive into the deep end of the pool. Start slowly. All right. So these two parameters here, we have the pitch modulation depth and we have the LFO speed. you can hear that once something starts vibrating more than 20 times a second, it begins to have its own pitch. And you can actually hear that changing in there. You can hear the pitch moving in there. Now, the super knob, of course, can move both of those knobs for you. Now, a lot of times you're playing with a synthesizer. The first synthesizers didn't have keys. It was just modules, and you were plugging things in, and you'd get a sound going, and you'd work with it. So you had two hands on there. But if you're performing, your two hands will be on the keyboard. This is where the super knob and the foot pedal become a very important part of making music. So what you want to be able to do is then figure how much depth do I want and at what speed. So what this particular voice does with this single element, it allows you to play it in real time. So when the super knob is at full, you can see that it sounds pretty normal. All right, so I'm moving both of those parameters. So I'm not only increasing the speed, but I'm also increasing the depth. All right, so the super knob allows you can think of it as an extra hand. So you can have 8 hands per part, all right, because you can link 8 of the knobs and move 8 parameters. All right, and then you multiply that times 8 in a single part, and then you can play 8 parts. So yes, you can have 64 oscillators playing in an AWM sound. That's not counting drums now. So 64 oscillators, musical oscillators in the sound. And you can address them almost individually. When I say that, I mean you can then customize how they respond to your super knob movement. This is what really makes this better than just cold layering sound on sound on sound on sound, and then you move a thing and they all do the same thing. You can customize each one to do its own thing in its own speed. So Montage, sample robot, very powerful. Sample something, you try something. One of my favorite expressions is there's no shortcut to experience, okay? No shortcut to experience. So the more you try, the better you get, all right? So you make an attempt. It's very simple to set up the sample robot, record something, have it automatically loop. You can save it as a user file or a library file. Now, a lot of people have got a lot of questions on user files and library files. Well, user file loads into the RAM area of the unit, and the library file loads into the ROM area of the instrument. I recommend you do user, and then you load it in, start building your sound. You wouldn't leave it as a permanent library. It makes a library file for you. This way you can load it into your unit without disturbing your user bank. Now let me try to make that clear. The user bank is your work area. It's like your desktop. It's where you're going to be doing your tinkering and putting things together. The library is like your permanent place. The book is published and you finished it, you're ready to release it, okay? So that's your permanent memory, all right? So the user area gets overwritten. You can overwrite the user area by loading in another user file. The library is read-only memory. It cannot be easily deleted or removed, all right? You can't do it by accident or load something in and it's gone, all right? The thing is, the library is your permanent. So if you are building up your own collection of sounds, you want to now have those in the user memory. That's when you would save as library, because it allows you to load new data into your Montage or MODX without disturbing your user bank. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that you can do. You make a user file, you load it up, and you start building your own instruments. The thing is, you can have so much fun with this. I get calls from people, wow, I started programming at like 9 o'clock at night, and it was 3 in the morning before I realized time had passed. So it's a really fun thing. You know that we can share sounds with each other on Sound Mondo. Please stop by YamahaSynth.com. I'm Bad Mister on the forums, and we try to get answers to questions when people are trying to do something with music. It's all about your music and having fun with it. If you're not having fun with your MIDI and your music, it's probably not a Yamaha. All right, thank you very much. This is Phil Clendeninn from NAMM 2020, and we're streaming live. See you out there on the forum.